Hi everyone, I'll be hosting a game jam. It'll be based on my 4 game developers jam off the same art kit series.
So I joined the Miz Jam by Miziziziz, which is based on his YouTube series where 4 game developers individually make a game using the same art kit. This time, it's a game jam, so thousands of people are developing their own game all at once. I had my eye on this game jam before it started, but I didn't plan on joining. It was only when I only had half of the jam left to make the game when I told myself, I have nothing better to do with my life. Let's make a game. Now, one of the requirements was that I had to make the game with the Kenny asset pack. I thought that the sprites were pretty cool for a 2D game and all, but then I also thought, wouldn't it be big brain if I made a 3D game with it? So I thought of this cool idea where you're in a dungeon crawler, but it's real time. I didn't want to waste any time with this because I still had to juggle my other duties with this game jam, so I went straight into Unity. I started by creating a little tile room, then made a script to hide the walls in between. This took me about 4 hours to make because my brain is pretty small. Then I handled the player movement with little hops because that looks pretty cool. When I finished both of those, I started making the dungeon. I kinda went all random and let my gut decide how the dungeon would be laid out. Now I also thought it would be pretty cool to have procedural generation, but I didn't want to add another unfinished prototype to the list of unfinished games I had. Let me finish this. I made the enemy AI with hot steaming spaghetti using the garbage inside my empty head. I worked on the crappy controls and bam! A dungeon crawler. The dungeon looked kinda nothing really appealing, so I wanted to add some variety. I learned a nice little trick a while back which I can use to make my dungeon look 10 times better, and that's to use normal maps. It makes my little dungeon look from something like this to this. Now that looks much better. Don't know what normal maps are? Well, you've come to the right place. All they are just pictures that tell you which direction a certain pixel is facing. Confused? Well, so am I. Anyway, I just used this normal maps guide that I yoinked from the interwebs. All I do is just pick a color here that would represent what direction this pixel is facing. I don't know if what I'm saying makes any sense. Then I just rinse and repeat for all the pixels on the sprite. Since each sprite in this art kit is just 16 by 16, it's pretty quick to do for something that adds a lot of value to the look of the game. As I make all of this, I just realized, I don't know what my game's mechanics will be. I just pictured my game as a horror game where a monster is chasing you, but I didn't know what to do after that. So I thought of a lot of ideas. Big brain ideas, small brain ideas. I asked my friends for some suggestions and one of them had an idea where you collect arrows which you would use to shoot the monster. I was about to go with this idea, but then I thought, let's just slender with more steps. Well, not really, but though I think it would be pretty cool to be able to fight back. I didn't want to implement that mechanic because I was running out of time. So I just implemented slender-like mechanics where you find 7 gems and go back to where you started to escape. I also added a mechanic where the player gets faster as the monster gets nearer to add to the stressful experience. It's a bit of a generic mechanic, but I think it's fine for a game jam. Good horror games are atmospheric, immersive, and scary. Sounds play a huge role in making horror games what they are. I focused a lot on it. I downloaded a lot of free SFX online, with the proper license of course, and edited it a little so it fits the game. I mostly just cut out the parts that I don't need. From there, I got myself a really creepy game. I got lucky and found a nice track for when you're being chased. I scale the volume of this to how close the monster is for that added stress. I think that's a nice and cheap touch. Pretty cool. So early on I got a bit tired of coding and wanted to play around with post-processing. By the way, I'll be saying post-processing a lot from now on, so I'll be calling it PP. So PP is very simple to do and only requires a few boops in Unity. What I did specifically for this game was that I actually had 2 objects/volumes doing the PP. One was static, which means its settings won't change, and the other was dynamic. The static PP just had subtle effects that make the dungeon look like a dungeon. What I planned to do for the dynamic PP was that when the monster gets near and near to the player, I'd crank up its weight. So the dynamic PP gets really heavy and obvious when you're next to the monster. Pretty cool, huh? It really does a good job in hiding how bad this game is. I was able to finish this game about 12 hours before the jam's deadline. In total, I spent almost 48 hours on this game, give or take. There were a few times where I forgot to time myself, and there were also a few other times where I forgot to stop the timer. By the end of the last day, I just gave up with the timer since I had about 18 hours left and I'm pretty sure that I won't be using the whole 18 hours that I had left. The game was well received on its design. It really does feel like a horror game because of all the sounds that I mashed in, which all complemented the atmospheric vibe which I was shooting for. The biggest issue that I got back was that the controls kinda suck. It's quite hard and difficult to use for most people. The controls were intentional. I wanted it to be okay to use when you're not in trouble, but difficult to use when you're running for your life. I'm quite fond of difficult games or games with difficult controls because I see it as a challenge. I love bet at 40s getting over it for the most part, but I still enjoy the hell out of that game. I might update the game to support keyboard controls when the Jam's rating period ends, and maybe I might just expand more in this game and release it on mobile. Regardless, I think I should have put an option anyway for keyboard controls in the end. Lessons have been learned. Anyway, this was a game that I had fun making. I've been wanting to make a horror game for a while now and I'm glad it turned out great. If you want to play the game, the link's in the description. I'd very much appreciate it if you would subscribe and follow me in, everywhere. Anyway, it's been fun. Till next time.